The Girl Who Returned Hope. On a freezing night in the city, where darkness wrapped around every corner like a heavy blanket, a small girl sat huddled in her torn clothes. Her name was Emma, and she was only 6 years old. But at this tender age, she was already facing the bitter truths of life. Weakened by hunger, she sat at the edge of an empty street, where the cold night air cut through to her bones. Her eyes were tired, exhausted from the weight of survival, but there was still a spark in them. A spark that said she wasn't ready to give up. She wasn't ready to stop fighting. Emma sat there with a small basket beside her, filled with a few pieces of fruit she hoped to sell. But today, just like every other day, her basket remained full. No one stopped. No one even looked her way. People walked past her as if she were invisible, as if her struggle didn't matter. She pulled her thin jacket tighter around her small frame, trying to shield herself from the biting wind. But it was no use. The cold crept through every thread, every tear in the fabric. Her fingers had turned purple from the cold, and she could barely feel them anymore. She wiggled them occasionally, trying to keep the blood flowing, but it was a losing battle against the harsh Chicago winter. The street lamp above her flickered, casting strange shadows on the sidewalk. She watched as families walked by, bundled in warm coats, laughing together as they headed to restaurants or theaters. They didn't see her, or maybe they chose not to. Emma had learned the difference. Some people genuinely didn't notice her sitting there in the shadows, but others, she could see it in their eyes. They saw her and deliberately looked away, as if acknowledging her existence would somehow make them responsible for her pain. Just then, a police officer walked by. His name was Officer Michael Chen, though Emma didn't know that yet. His face was hard, stern, his eyes scanning the street with suspicion, as if everyone he saw was guilty of something. He had been on the force for 15 years, and those years had hardened him. He'd seen too many cons, too many lies, too many people trying to take advantage of others. When his gaze landed on Emma, a look of contempt crossed his face. "You again," he muttered in a cold voice, his breath forming white clouds in the freezing air. Emma just lowered her head. She knew better than to argue with him. She had learned that lesson the hard way a few weeks ago when she'd tried to explain herself, and he'd threatened to call child services. But as the officer turned to walk away, something fell from his pocket. His wallet. It hit the ground with a soft thud, but the sound of traffic and the wind masked it completely. He didn't notice, but Emma did. She watched as he continued walking, his heavy boots echoing on the pavement, moving further away with each step. She reached out and picked it up, her small fingers wrapping around the worn leather. It was heavy, substantial. She opened it slightly and saw cash inside. More cash than she'd ever seen in one place. There were 20s, 50s, maybe even a $100 bill tucked in the back. Along with the money were credit cards, an ID, and some photos of what looked like his family. This money could change everything. It could fill her empty stomach that had been growling for 2 days straight. It could buy medicine for her sick mother, who had been coughing up blood that morning. It could pay their overdue rent so they wouldn't be evicted next week. For a moment, her heart raced with possibility. She imagined buying a warm meal, a real meal with vegetables and meat, not just the stale bread they'd been surviving on. She imagined the relief on her mother's face when she brought home the medicine. But then, another thought entered her mind, clear as a bell in the chaos of her desperation. "This isn't mine. This belongs to him." She remembered her mother's words from just that morning, when Emma had found a quarter on the street and asked if she could keep it. Her mother had said, "Emma, sweetheart, we may have nothing, but we have our integrity. That's something no one can ever take from us unless we give it away." A battle raged inside her. On one side, hunger and desperation pulled at her, whispering that she deserved this, that she needed it more than anyone. The officer probably had a salary, benefits, a home. What was a few $100s to him? But to her, it was survival. On the other side, her honesty, her integrity, stood firm like an unmovable wall. She thought of her mother's words. Always do what's right, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Emma made her decision. She placed the wallet carefully in her basket, stood up on shaky legs that had been sitting too long in the cold, and ran after the officer. "Sir, "Sir, you dropped your wallet," she called out, her voice cutting through the cold night air, hoarse from not having spoken much all day. The officer stopped and turned around, confusion written across his face. His hand instinctively went to his back pocket, and his eyes widened when he felt nothing there. Why would this little girl be running after him? Why wasn't she just running away with his wallet? "Here, please take it," Emma said softly, holding out the wallet with both hands, offering it like a precious gift. Her hands trembled, partly from the cold, partly from the effort of running, partly from the magnitude of what she was giving up. The officer's eyes widened in shock. He took the wallet carefully, as if it might disappear if he moved too quickly. He checked inside, his fingers rifling through the contents. Everything was there. Every dollar, every card, even the photos of his wife and 2 children, untouched. He stared at Emma, then back at the wallet, then at Emma again. His face went through a series of emotions: surprise, confusion, disbelief, and then something softer. You didn't take anything?" he asked, his voice softer now, almost disbelieving. He couldn't understand it. In his 15 years on the force, he'd seen people steal for far less reason. He'd seen adults, people with jobs and homes, pocket money that wasn't theirs just because they could. Emma shook her head, her tangled hair falling across her face. "No, sir." The officer's face changed. The hardness melted away, replaced by something else. Something human. He stood there in silence for a moment, struggling to find words. His throat felt tight. "You know," he finally said, his voice thick with emotion, "if you hadn't returned this, your life could have been different. You could have used this money. There's almost $300 here." He paused, really looking at her for the first time, taking in her torn clothes, her thin frame, her purple fingers. "You look like you need it more than I do." Emma smiled, a small, gentle smile that lit up her tired face despite everything. "I'm honest, sir. That's why I returned it. My mom always says that our character is all we really own." The officer's eyes filled with tears. He quickly wiped them away, embarrassed. He wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't come. What could he say? How could he explain that this child had just taught him something he'd forgotten in his years of cynicism? He simply nodded, his jaw clenched with emotion, and pulled out a $20 bill from his wallet. "Please, take this at least, for your honesty." But Emma shook her head. "No, thank you, sir. It was yours. I was just returning what belonged to you." The officer stood there, stunned. Finally, he turned and walked away. But something had changed inside him, something profound. He couldn't stop thinking about that little girl. Her name. He didn't even know her name. Emma's life had always been a struggle. Her family had never known comfort or prosperity. Her father, David, had died when she was just 3 years old. He'd been a construction worker, and one day he simply didn't come home. There had been an accident on the site, a crane malfunction. Emma barely remembered him now, just fragments of memories like puzzle pieces that didn't quite fit together. A laugh, strong hands lifting her up, the smell of his aftershave. Her mother, Sarah, was left to raise her alone. Sarah was a frail woman, her health deteriorating with each passing year. She worked day and night, doing whatever jobs she could find, cleaning offices at night, washing dishes at a diner, taking in laundry from neighbors. She tried desperately to give her daughter a chance at life, but it felt like swimming against an impossible current. But when Emma turned 6, Sarah's illness became critical. The cough that had been bothering her for months got worse, much worse. She started coughing up blood. The free clinic doctor's face had been grave when he delivered the diagnosis: advanced tuberculosis. She needed expensive medication, ongoing treatment, maybe even hospitalization. The doctor had given them a prescription and a sad, sympathetic look that said he knew they couldn't afford it. Sarah had already sold everything they owned: their small home in the suburbs that David had been so proud of, her wedding ring, and the few pieces of jewelry her mother had given her, every possession of value. Now they lived in a tiny rented room in one of the poorest neighborhoods in Chicago, barely scraping by. The room was on the 3rd floor of a crumbling building, where the heat rarely worked and the pipes froze in winter. They shared a bathroom with 3 other families, but it was shelter, and Sarah was grateful for even that. Most days, Emma and her mother survived on bread and water. Sometimes not even that. Sometimes Sarah would pretend she wasn't hungry so Emma could eat the single portion they had. Emma knew what her mother was doing, but she was too young to stop her. One day, Emma looked up at her mother with innocent eyes, those big brown eyes that still held hope despite everything, and asked, "Mom, why do we have to struggle so much? Why is everything so hard for us? The kids at school, before I left, they had lunch boxes with sandwiches and cookies and juice. Why can't we have that?" Sarah smiled through her pain, gently stroking her daughter's hair with her thin, work-worn hands. "Sweetheart, life brings challenges to everyone. But if we stay honest and work hard, one day everything will be okay. Your father always said that good things come to good people. It might take time, but it will come." Emma wanted to believe her mother's words, but a hollow feeling settled in her chest. She knew her mother needed medicine. She could hear her coughing through the night, a deep, wet cough that seemed to shake her entire body. She knew they needed money, and she decided, with the determination only a child can have, that she would do something about it. The next day, Emma stopped going to school. She had loved school, loved reading especially. Her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, had said she was gifted, that she could do great things if she kept studying. But what good were books when her mother was dying? She thought that if she wasn't in class, she could spend the whole day at the market selling fruit. When Sarah discovered this, she broke down crying. "Emma, no. Your education is everything. It's your way out of this life. Please, baby, don't do this." But Emma held her hand and said firmly, "Mom, I don't mind leaving school. I want to help you. We need the money now, not later." Every day, Emma sat at her spot on the corner of Michigan Avenue and 14th Street, with her small basket of fruit that her mother managed to scrape together. Sarah would wake up at 4 in the morning and take the bus to the wholesale market, using their last few dollars to buy bruised apples, overripe bananas, oranges with soft spots, fruit that the regular vendors didn't want but that they could afford. But selling was nearly impossible. People looked at her with disdain. Some even mocked her. Business people in their suits would walk by, talking on their phones about deals worth thousands of dollars, and wouldn't spare a glance at the child selling fruit for $1 apiece. One day, a man in an expensive coat grabbed an apple from her basket and walked away without paying. Emma tried to stop him, tugging at his coat. "Sir, please, that's $1. He looked down at her with irritation and shoved her hard. "Get away from me, kid. Don't you have parents?" Emma fell to the ground, her basket spilling, fruit rolling across the dirty sidewalk. People walked around her like she was an obstacle, stepping over the apples, crushing one under a heel. No one stopped to help. No one asked if she was okay. That night, Emma came home crying, her knee scraped and bleeding, her apples ruined and unsellable. Her mother held her close and said, "Baby, there are people in this world who will hurt you, who will try to bring you down, but we can't let them change who we are. We have to keep walking our path. Your father used to say that the measure of a person isn't how they treat people who can help them, but how they treat people who can't. That man showed who he really is today. You don't ever become like him, you hear me?" Emma listened to her mother's words, but a deep pain settled in her heart. She knew her mother's condition was getting worse. She knew they needed medicine desperately. The landlord had come by yesterday, threatening eviction. They were 3 weeks behind on rent, but they had no money. The choice was medicine or rent, and Sarah had chosen to keep a roof over their heads, hoping her body would somehow fight off the disease on its own. One day, Emma made a decision that broke her heart. She sold her only toy from childhood, a worn-out doll that had been her companion through the darkest nights. It had been a gift from her father before he died, one of the few things she had left of him. A lady at a yard sale had given her $15 for it. Emma had clutched that money in her hand all the way to the pharmacy, gone inside, and bought a bottle of the cough medicine the doctor had prescribed. It wasn't the antibiotic they really needed, but it was something. When she brought it home, Sarah pulled her daughter into her arms and wept. "Baby, you sold your precious doll. That was from your daddy. How could you do that?" Emma smiled through her own tears, trying to be brave. "Mom, for you, I would do anything. Dad would understand. He'd want you to get better." Days turned into weeks, and Emma's body grew weaker from hunger. Her ribs started to show through her skin. Her clothes hung loose on her frame. But her spirit grew stronger. She learned that life was filled with struggles, but she would never give up. She had to stay strong for her mother. Then one day, while sitting at the market, she saw a hungry child crying near the bus stop. The little boy couldn't have been more than 4 years old, tears streaming down his face, calling for his mama. Emma's heart melted. She took an apple from her basket, one of her better ones, without bruises, and walked over to the child. "Here, sweetie, are you hungry?" The boy nodded, taking the apple with both hands and biting into it immediately. A moment later, a frantic woman ran up, sweeping the boy into her arms. "Thank God! I only looked away for a second." She looked at Emma. "Did you give him this?" Emma nodded. The woman's eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you so much. Can I pay you?" But Emma shook her head. "No, ma'am. He needed it." The child's mother thanked her again, but Emma's heart ached as she walked back to her spot. She knew that now her basket was even emptier, and she might not eat today, but she didn't regret it. She couldn't regret it. That little boy's smile was worth more than the dollar she would have made. As days passed, Emma's strength faded, but something inside her remained unbroken, a core of steel that poverty couldn't touch. Then one night, she saw her mother's condition worsen dramatically. Sarah had collapsed in their room, her fever spiking, her breathing shallow and rapid. A neighbor helped Emma get her mother to the emergency room, but without insurance, the hospital could only stabilize her and send her home with another prescription they couldn't afford. The doctor said Sarah needed an expensive antibiotic regimen immediately, or the tuberculosis would kill her within months, maybe weeks. Emma's heart broke into pieces that night. She watched her mother sleep fitfully, listened to her labored breathing, and felt utterly helpless. That night, she slipped out into the dark streets, desperate, hoping maybe she could find some way to help, some way to earn money. Maybe someone would need their sidewalks swept, or their trash taken out, or anything. But the city at night was dangerous and frightening. The streetlights cast long shadows that seemed to reach for her. She heard glass breaking somewhere in the distance, voices raised in anger. As she walked alone, trying to look purposeful and unafraid, she noticed someone watching her. It was that same police officer, Officer Chen. His eyes were fixed on her, his face serious. "You again," he said, his voice cutting through the night. "What are you doing out here at this hour? It's past midnight. Where are your parents?" Emma was scared, her heart hammering in her chest, but she steadied herself. "Sir, I'm looking for work," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. The officer's eyes hardened. He'd seen this before. Kids on the streets at night, always with a story. Looking for work, or looking to pick someone's pocket. You know what happens to kids out here this time of night? Nothing good. Emma's face went pale. She quickly put her hands together in a pleading gesture. "No, sir. I'm not doing anything like that. I swear, I would never. I just need money for my mother's medicine. She's really sick. She has tuberculosis, and she needs antibiotics, and they cost $200, and I don't know how to get that much money, but I have to try because if I don't, she's going to die." The words tumbled out in a rush, desperation making her forget to breathe. The officer's expression softened slightly, but suspicion remained. He'd heard every sob story there was. "Your mother's medicine," he repeated slowly, "and you think wandering around at night will get you money?" Emma stayed silent, tears forming in her eyes. She knew how it sounded. She knew he didn't believe her. "I don't know what else to do," she finally whispered. "I tried selling fruit, but nobody buys from me. I tried asking for work, but nobody will hire a 6-year-old. I'm just trying to help her." The officer stared at her for a long moment. There was something about this kid, something familiar. Then it hit him. This was the girl who'd returned his wallet. He'd been thinking about her for weeks, kicking himself for not getting her name, for not doing more. "Wait," he said, his voice changing. "You're the girl, the one who found my wallet." Emma looked up at him, recognition dawning in her eyes. "Yes, sir, that was me." Officer Chen felt something crack inside his chest. This child, this honest, good child, was out here in the middle of the night, desperate to save her mother. He thought about his own children, safe and warm in their beds at home. He thought about what it would take for them to be in this situation. His voice was gentle when he spoke again. "What's your name, kid?" "Emma, sir. Emma Rodriguez." "Emma. Okay, listen to me, Emma. You can't be out here at night. It's not safe. but I want to help you. What's your address?" Emma gave him the address, and Officer Chen's jaw tightened. He knew that building. It was in one of the worst neighborhoods in Chicago, a place where even cops tried to avoid going alone. "All right," he said. "Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to drive you home right now, and tomorrow I'm going to come by and we're going to figure this out. Okay?" Emma nodded, not quite believing what was happening. Was this real? Was he really going to help? That night, Officer Chen drove Emma home in his patrol car. When they arrived at the building, he helped her up the stairs to the third floor. Sarah was awake, frantic with worry, and nearly collapsed with relief when she saw her daughter. "Emma! Oh my God, baby, where were you? I woke up and you were gone, and She broke into a coughing fit, her body shaking. Officer Chen introduced himself, explained what had happened, and looked around the tiny room they called home. It was barely bigger than a closet. There was one thin mattress on the floor, a hot plate in the corner, a couple of plastic crates serving as furniture. The wallpaper was peeling, and he could see mold in the corners. This was how they lived. "Mrs. Rodriguez," he said gently, "I'd like to help, if you'll let me. No strings attached. Your daughter did something extraordinary for me, and I'd like to return the favor." Sarah's pride wanted to say no. She'd been refusing charity for years, determined to make it on her own. But looking at Emma's hopeful face, at her thin body and tired eyes, she couldn't refuse. "We need medicine," she said quietly, "for my tuberculosis. The prescription is there." She pointed to a piece of paper on the windowsill. Officer Chen picked it up, looked at the names of the medications, and nodded. "I'll take care of it, first thing tomorrow." True to his word, the next morning, Officer Chen showed up with bags of groceries and the medications Sarah needed. But he didn't stop there. Over the following weeks, he checked in regularly. He paid their back rent. He made sure they had food. And he insisted that Emma return to school. He even bought her new clothes and supplies. Sarah cried the first time she saw her daughter in a new coat, warm and clean. "Why are you doing all this?" she asked him one day. "You don't even know us." Officer Chen smiled. "Your daughter taught me something I'd forgotten. She reminded me why I became a cop in the first place. To protect people, to help people. I'd become so cynical, seeing the worst in everyone. But Emma, she showed me that goodness still exists, that people can be trusted. She gave me back something I'd lost." He paused. "And honestly, I have the means to help. My wife and we've been blessed. We have good jobs, a nice home. If we can't help someone in need, what's the point of having any of it?" As the weeks turned into months, Sarah's health improved dramatically with proper medication and nutrition. The cough subsided, color returned to her face. She was able to work again, this time with Officer Chen's help, finding her a better job at a community center. Emma returned to school, where Mrs. Patterson welcomed her back with tears of joy. "I knew you'd come back," the teacher said. "You're too bright not to." Emma threw herself into her studies with a fierce determination. She'd lost time, but she was going to make it up. Every night, she did her homework at the small table Officer Chen had brought them. Every morning, she woke up early to study before school. And slowly, steadily, her grades climbed. By the end of the year, she was at the top of her class. But Officer Chen wasn't satisfied with just helping Emma and Sarah. Their story had affected him so deeply that he wanted to do more. He started telling people about Emma, her honesty, her courage, her determination. He told his fellow officers. He told his friends. He told his wife, who immediately wanted to meet this remarkable child. Word spread through the police station, then through the neighborhood, then further. One day, a local news reporter approached Officer Chen. She'd heard Emma's story and wanted to feature it on the evening news. Officer Chen asked Emma and Sarah, and after some hesitation, they were private people, they agreed, hoping that maybe their story could inspire others. The segment aired on a Thursday night. It was only 3 minutes long, but it captured Emma's journey perfectly. It showed her at school, studying hard. It showed Sarah healthy again, working at the community center. And it showed Officer Chen explaining how this little girl had changed his life. The response was overwhelming. The news station was flooded with calls and emails. People wanted to help. They wanted to donate. A local businessman called and offered to set up a college fund for Emma. a family foundation reached out to Sarah about a job opportunity. The owner of a small restaurant called and asked if they could donate meals for the family. It was like the entire city had been moved by the story of honesty and redemption. 2 weeks later, Officer Chen organized a community gathering at the neighborhood park. He'd kept it a secret from Emma, wanting to surprise her. When Emma arrived, she was stunned to find hundreds of people there. There was a small stage set up, decorated with balloons and banners. As she walked through the crowd, people applauded. Some called out her name. Emma looked at her mother in confusion. "What's happening, Mom?" Sarah, who was in on the surprise, just smiled and squeezed her daughter's hand. "You'll see, baby." Officer Chen took the stage and called Emma up. With her mother beside her, Emma climbed the steps, her legs shaking. "Emma," Officer Chen began, his voice echoing through the speakers, "you are one of the most remarkable people I've ever met. At 6 years old, you showed a level of integrity and character that many adults never achieve. You returned my wallet when you could have kept it. You sacrificed your education to help your mother. You remained kind even when the world was cruel to you. Today, this community wants to honor you and show you that your goodness has not gone unnoticed." He gestured, and someone brought forward a large ceremonial check. Emma's eyes widened as she read the amount. $50,000. "This money," Officer Chen continued, his voice thick with emotion, "has been donated by people throughout Chicago. It's for you and your mother. It's for your education, for your future. It's their way of saying thank you for reminding us all what really matters." Emma couldn't speak. Tears streamed down her face. Sarah was crying too, overwhelmed by the generosity of strangers. When Emma finally found her voice, it was small and trembling. I don't know what to say. I didn't do anything special. I just returned what wasn't mine. Anyone would have done the same thing." An older woman in the crowd called out, "No, honey, not everyone. Most people wouldn't have. That's why we're here." The crowd murmured in agreement. Officer Chen nodded. "Emma, that's exactly what makes you special. You don't even realize how rare it is. In a world where people are often looking out for themselves, you put integrity first. You did the right thing even when it cost you everything. That's heroism. That's what we're celebrating today." As Emma stood on that stage, holding the check, looking out at hundreds of smiling faces, something shifted inside her. For so long, she'd felt invisible, like her struggles didn't matter to anyone. But now she understood. She wasn't invisible. She had never been invisible. Her actions had mattered. Her choices had mattered. And in some small way, she had changed the world around her. In the months that followed, Emma's life transformed in ways she'd never imagined. The money was placed in a trust fund, with a portion available for immediate needs and the rest saved for her education. Sarah's health continued to improve until she was completely recovered, her tuberculosis cured. They moved into a better apartment, nothing fancy but warm and safe and clean. Emma continued to excel in school, her natural intelligence finally given the chance to flourish. Officer Chen became like family to them. His wife, Linda, and their 2 children became close with Emma. They had dinners together, celebrated holidays together. Emma finally had the childhood she deserved, filled with laughter and learning instead of hunger and fear. Years passed, and Emma never forgot that cold night when she returned the wallet. She carried the lesson with her always, that integrity isn't just about doing the right thing when people are watching, but especially when they're not. That character is built in small moments, in small choices, when it would be so easy to compromise. When Emma graduated high school as valedictorian, Officer Chen and his family were in the front row, cheering louder than anyone. When she got her acceptance letter to Harvard on a full scholarship, Officer Chen cried. When she gave her college application essay to him to read, titled "The Wallet: How Honesty Changed My Life," he couldn't speak for several minutes, just sat there with tears running down his face. Emma went on to become a social worker, dedicating her life to helping children in situations like the one she'd been in. She never forgot where she came from. She never forgot what it felt like to be invisible, to be desperate, to be judged. And she used those memories to fuel her compassion, to drive her work, to change lives the way hers had been changed. Officer Chen, for his part, started a nonprofit organization called Emma's Promise, dedicated to helping homeless children and single parents. He spoke at schools and community centers, always telling Emma's story, always emphasizing that one choice, one act of integrity can ripple outward in ways you never imagine. That moment on the cold street, when a hungry little girl chose honesty over survival, changed two lives. But it did more than that. It changed a family, it changed a community. It reminded an entire city that goodness still existed, that people could still be trusted, that hope was still possible even in the darkest circumstance. Emma's story spread far beyond Chicago. It was featured in national news, in magazines, in a book that Officer Chen wrote years later. People across the country were moved by it. Teachers used it in their classrooms. Parents shared it with their children. And everywhere it went, it carried the same simple but powerful message. Your character matters. Your choices matter. Even when you think no one is watching, even when you think it doesn't make a difference, it does. Because that's the power of integrity. It doesn't just change your life. It changes the world around you, one person at a time, one choice at a time, one act of unexpected goodness at a time. Moral of the story: true wealth isn't measured in dollars, it's measured in character. Honesty, even in the face of desperate circumstances, has the power to transform not just your own life, but the lives of everyone around you. The choices we make in our darkest moments define who we really are. Call to action. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe for more inspiring stories that remind us of the good that still exists in this world. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today, and leave a comment telling us how this story made you feel. Your support helps us continue bringing these powerful messages to life. Remember, you never know how your small act of kindness or integrity might change someone's life forever.